written a book, and I pulled mine out last night because I wanted to bring it and show you. But get a copy of their book, Hope for Your Marriage. It's a really, really great book with some funny stories in it, okay? So make sure you guys get a copy.
Thank you. Give it up for Roy and Farrah. Woo! Man, happy Father's Day to all the fathers. And I hope you enjoyed breakfast. We call those donuts. They're amazing. But just remember, they're just air. So no calories on Father's Day. So.
Just air. We're at the church. It's fine, right?
It's completely fine.
Egg and flour.
Egg and flour. It's healthy. It's a breakfast, Hey, this whole month we have been talking, the amazing teachers that are in this class, we've been talking about what love is. This whole year we've been talking about what love is. And this month we've talked about and focused in on how love is honorable and love is respectful. And you know what? We wanted to give a different spin on it today. I remember my mom, the first time I ever got ready to get up and speak somewhere, I was actually in my youth group, all 7 of us. I was getting ready to prepare my first message. And my mom told me, she said, Clayton, if you share something from your mind, it has potential to reach another mind. If you share something from your heart, it has potential to reach another heart. She said, but if you share something from your life that's impacted your life, it has potential to impact someone else's life. So we've always taken that to heart, and we believe today, this is something that we're going to share today that's literally impacted our life, it's impacted our marriage, and we believe it'll impact yours as well. So everybody say amen. Cool. Hey, but we want to define what marriage is. Ashlee and I kind of came up with our own definition of what marriage is. We believe that marriage is an ongoing educational course that neither one of you are going to graduate from until one of you takes your last breath. Amen. Yay. Isn't that fun? Huh? Yeah.
It is fun. It's fun to learn.
It is fun.
There have been trying times where it's been tough, but I love learning more about him. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. I just find it fascinating to learn more. I've decided that I'm going to become a student of human behavior for my husband so that I know him and that I can adjust and change to meet his needs and vice versa.
And that change happens in seasons. Yeah. If you've been married for any length of time, you go through seasons in your marriage just like you go through seasons in your life. And so you have to adapt in those seasons. But what we're going to talk to you today about is how to be respectful and how to be honoring in those seasons. Because even though those seasons might change, you're still the same type of person. You're the same person you are, but you may respond differently. Your spouse may respond differently, but it's pulling out those great things that God's placed within them and honoring those things in how you live your life.
Have you guys ever had those aha moments? My daughter, my older daughter, follows this Instagram account called I Was Today Years Old When I Figured This Out. It's like Michelle and I just figured out the other day that if you have a half an avocado left and you put it in water and put it in the fridge, it'll actually stay instead of turning brown. Like, how did I not know this? We eat avocados all the time. Or the bobby pin that we put in our hair, that you're really supposed to put it on the ridge side down. It was actually created to do that, to hold your hair better. For 40 years, I'd been putting it the other way. One of those aha moments, right? And one of the stories, and I know a lot of you have heard this story before, and I might get some of the details wrong, but I love this story that I heard about a daughter who was sitting in the kitchen while her mom was making a pot roast. And she noticed her mom cut the ends of the pot roast off, and she was like, Mom, why are you cutting the ends of the pot roast off? And she goes, well, I don't know. That's just how my mom did it. Why don't you just call her and find out? Probably makes it taste better or something. So she called her grandmother and said, Grandma, why do you cut the ends of the pot roast off when you cook the pot roast? And she goes, well, I don't know. I think it just helps the flavors. I'm not sure. Why don't you call your great-grandmother, who is still alive? So she called her great-grandmother. She said, Great-grandmother, why do you cut the ends of the pot roast off? Your daughter does it. Your granddaughter does it. I'm trying to figure this out. She goes, well, the reason I did it was because my stove was small and I had to cut the ends off so that it would fit into the stove. That's the only reason I did it. And she was like, so you don't need to cut the ends off? She was like, no, not unless you have a small stove. Or oven. And so I just think that story is so funny because the daughters never asked. They never asked if there was a different way to do things. And what we want to share with you guys today is something that we learned in our marriage that helped us to understand each other's strengths. Before we knew each other's strengths, there were things about him that would frustrate me to no end. One of his strengths is positivity. And if you're a Pastor Joel's sermon today, that's what his message is about. But it would drive me crazy sometimes because he was always so positive. And I was like, God, why can't I be as positive as him? So today we want to talk to you about a thing called the StrengthFinders test, and how that gave us that aha moment of, wow, if we would have only known this at the beginning of our marriage, our lives would have been so much better. Oh yeah, and one of the scriptures that we're really basing this on is Romans 12:10, that says, love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Take delight in honoring each other. I think sometimes we're like, oh, I need to do better at honoring, but we need to take delight in it, is what Romans says. And we have learned to take delight in each other when we recognized each other's strengths. And we now try to honor each other in our strengths.
Yeah, and taking delight in learning more about each other. And I think that's what we're going to talk to you about today about is, even though it's Clifton StrengthFinders, it's really a tool. And there's not one tool that's better than another tool. And if I can give you any piece of advice that I've learned from people who have been married a lot longer than us, find as many tools that you can to put in your toolbox for your marriage.
Yes.
Just like Pastor Joel talks about how you put God's word inside of you. You never know when you're going to need it. But when you have the right tool, you can pull it out and you can use it for whatever you're dealing with.
Yes.
And so this is just a tool that you can use to help you in your marriage. And it's regardless, even though you may have taken this test before, even though you may have studied this before, it still just helps us understand each other and honor each other through the different seasons of our marriage. Mm-hmm. So a guy named Don Clifton, he was a psychologist, he was a doctor. They interviewed over 1.7 million professionals. This was actually built for something to be used in the workforce. But they broke down all these different strengths that people have through different questioning and asking them different questions and different things. And over the years, they really began to look at, hey, what if we focused in on, instead of focusing in on weaknesses, what if we looked at what you're good at? And to me, it was such a change in their mindset to really focus in on strengths instead of weaknesses.
Yeah, and so the quote that we got from him that we thought was so powerful, he said, what would happen if we studied what was right with people versus what's wrong with people? And so he spent years developing this test called the StrengthFinders test, and it's done through the Gallup poll industry. And so they came up with these 34 strengths. And they say that when you take this test, and they spent years developing this test, and it's used a lot in corporations. A lot of businesses use it to kind of figure out where to put people in their business. So when they came up with these 34, they developed a test where you can find out what are your top strengths. Focus in on those. Don't look at your weaknesses. Focus in on your strengths, and how can you make your strengths stronger? Because you're never going to make number 34 up to number 1. It's not going to happen. So look at those top 5 and 10, and how can you develop and make those stronger?
Now, we're not going to share everything about StrengthFinders test today because it'd take too long. But I think something that you'll find when you go online, you take this test, and it's very easy. You don't have to study for it. Don't worry about it. I'm not a good test taker myself, but you take the test, and then it begins to tell you what your strengths are. How do you respond in different situations? Well, whenever you look at these top 5, they say your top 5 strengths that you have. What's interesting is that if you took your top 5 in sequential order, it would take you interviewing 33,390,720 people before you found someone else that had the exact same 5 in the sequential order. Now, there's 34 that they came out with. If you go out to number 8, top 8 in sequential order, you would have to interview 7.3 billion people to get the same top 8 strengths in sequential order. So what does that mean? That means that no one has ever lived, nor will ever live, that has the same top 34 strengths that you have in sequential order. What does that look like? Ephesians says that you are a masterpiece.
Come on.
Created by God for his pleasure, for his good pleasure, right? So that means that your spouse is a masterpiece, created for God for his good pleasure. You know, and so when you honor and you respect the creation that God has given you, and you see the strengths that God has given you, it's very easy to honor that and to look.
You almost pushed me down. Yes, keep going. I felt it. Holy Spirit.
And you gotta laugh a lot, you know, you gotta laugh a lot. But you begin to see what God has given you. God has given you this gift. And if you focus in on the things that creates them fantastic and a masterpiece, it's so easy to get along with and run life together in your marriage.
That's good.
And you have to do that on a daily basis. My parents took this test after 40 years of marriage. What they found out, they paid to get the entire thing, all 34, because they just wanted to see it. What they found out, my father's top 5 strengths were my mom's bottom 5 strengths. My mom's top 5 strengths were my dad's lower 5 strengths. And they wondered why they had been frustrating and hitting heads for a lot of different areas instead of honoring and respecting each other for the way that God created them. And if they would have realized that sooner, they said if we'd realized that sooner, it would have been a game changer in our marriage.
Yeah. So we want to ask you this question. What would happen if you studied what was right with your spouse versus what's wrong with them?
So good.
And that's what we want to present to you guys today. We first took this test about, how long did you say, 8 years ago? 9 years ago?
First time?
Well, we took it a long time ago. My sister-in-law got us to take it because she was using it in education. We were like, oh, this is fun. We kind of blew it off, didn't study it. Then when we got into marriage and we started studying more, we were like, we really need to work on ourselves.
Why didn't we take it sooner? Why didn't we pay attention?
We're confessing to you guys, we didn't apply it. Then 8 years later, our church actually implemented it and all the staff took it. And so we took it again. And you know, what I said earlier about Clayton is that he's a very positive person. Like he is Pastor Joel positive. Like, I mean, like everything is like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And there were times where I would be like, well, but what if? What if this were to happen? What are we going to do? Well, we just got to pray and believe. And I'm like, but what if this, babe? Like this could happen. No, we got to pray and believe. And I'm like, Lord, please help me to be as positive as Clayton. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, why can't I be positive like him? And so the situation that came up right when we were taking this test was our daughter was celebrating her 13th birthday. We had just we had saved up. We put a pool in the backyard, and we were going to have a swim party. And I looked and I saw that it was going to rain. And so I was like, babe, what are we going to do if it rains?
Well, you started about a month out.
Yeah.
And you said, what are we going to do if it rains?
Right, I guess, yeah. Yes. And he was like,
Give
hey,
context. Just give me
you
context.
just got to pray and believe that it's not going to rain. I'm like, but what if? He was like, babe, come on. You know, you got to believe. Don't worry. So anyway, I took this test. Strategic is my #1 strength. And when I read the definition of strategic, it says the strategic theme enables you to sort through the clutter and find the best route. It is not a skill that can be taught. It is a distinct way of thinking, a special perspective on the world at large. This perspective allows you to see patterns where others simply see complexity. Mindful of these patterns, you play out alternative scenarios, always asking, what if this happened? Okay, well, what if this happened? This recurring question helps you see around the next corner. There you can evaluate accurately the potential obstacles. I literally started crying and I said, I am not negative, I'm strategic. And I realized the difference was I wasn't coming to him saying, oh, the party's gonna be terrible. It's supposed to rain. Now that's being negative.
Right.
I want this to be a great party. So if it rains, let's have a plan B and then a plan C and a plan D because I still believe it's gonna be a great party. I just wanna have another plan.
What was interesting was that I functioned that way in my job. We would come up with scenarios, but then when I got home, I didn't think that way. But when we did the research and we began to apply those things to our marriage, I was like, I'm so grateful that she has that strength. I don't have strategic very high on my on my list, but because she does, what I love to tell couples is that when you're running your race in your marriage, you as an individual, I have 5 top strengths that I can run my race with that God's laid out for me, right? Well, Ashlee has her top 5 strengths that she can run with, and one of the things that Dr. Clifton said is that when you're operating in your top 5 strengths, it's like endorphins go off. It's like you're on drugs, right? It's like,
but in a good way.
In a good way, right? So when you're operating in the strength that God's given you, it's easy because that's how God's created you. The beautiful thing about in marriage is that really you're running a race. It's like you're running hold my mic. Okay. You're running a race side by side. I'm in a lane, she's in a lane, but we're holding hands as we run our race that God's given us. But you know what? Sometimes I take the lead, still holding her hand. Sometimes I take the lead based on the strengths that God's given me. Yes. But sometimes I let her take the lead because she's operating in the strengths that God's given her. Amen. I heard a well-known celebrity, and if I called his name, you would know it. I heard him say one time that his marriage had failed, and he said the reason was because in our marriage, he said, in our marriage, I was the front man, and my wife played the tambourine. And she was an amazing tambourine player, and I was an amazing front man. He said the problem that started our marriage to crumble was because she came up to be the front man in the season of their marriage, and I was willing to come back and play the tambourine, but I wasn't playing it very well. I wasn't supporting her. I wasn't encouraging her as she ran and she led out in their marriage. But as married couples, if we will recognize the strengths that God's given us, then we can encourage and play that tambourine just as loud as we want to, because you don't just have 5 strengths, top strengths. You actually get to take advantage, and you have 10 strengths. But it's recognizing and empowering them to do that whenever you see it.
Yeah, that's good, right? One thing, we didn't have this in the notes, but after we took the test, we were planning this trip to Disney with the church. The church used to do different trips and things, family trips. And I was like, this was before our iPhones really had all the things it had. It was right when iPhones, I don't know. So I did a lot of planning, and Clayton recognized strategic in my top 5 instead of being like, you know what, everything's going to be okay. We'll just enjoy Disney. It'll be fine. He was like, no, babe, you plan it. You do it. You do your thing. You do your magic. You lead on this. And so I did. I studied everything. I had a whole notebook of where we were going to go, when we were riding each line, where we were going to take breaks. Yeah, I put naps in there for him. He was so grateful. I mean, I did it all. And then when I created everything, I handed it to him because he has a ranger in his top 5. And so he's really good at arranging things. I can get it all together, but then when we get there, I'm like, okay, what did I say? Where do we go? Where's north? I don't even know, you know? And so he was like, oh, babe, I got it now. Okay, what did your plan say? Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to go here. Oh, and you said to avoid that spot because we had the best time because I had made the plan and then I let him execute it. It was so awesome. We had a great vacation.
She started 6 months before we left. And she handed me, I'm not joking, we still have it. She handed me a binder that was this thick. But it was broken down strategically every day so we'd have the greatest vacation of our life. And then she literally passed the ball off to me and I ran with it. She goes, okay, here, execute the plan. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And we ran and we did it.
And the picture, I don't know if you can go back to the before picture. So this was last year we were packing to go on our 25th anniversary trip. This is me packing. Like, I look at that and it's like, bleh, I don't even know what to do. Like, I'm so bad at packing. And he would always be like, let me do it for you. And I would be like, no, I can do it myself. I don't need your help, you know. But then when I found out he had a ranger in his top 5, and he said, I love it when things are like Tetris. Like, he said, helping people move and putting things in a van. And he goes, let me have it. I can figure it out and figure out where to put things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do that. I don't even know what that means. And so I posted that. I was like, this is me packing for a trip, and this is Clayton. Go to the next one. Y'all, this thing is standing up. It's not even laying down, and nothing is falling out. I'm like, how? It's like magic. I'm like, I don't know. So now I know he has a ranger in his top 5. So I'm like, babe, will you pack my bag? I'll get it all down there for you, but then can you arrange it for me? Because I'm so bad at that. But if we didn't know that about each other, we would get frustrated with each other. You know, it was so freeing for me to understand strategic, but for him to understand that too, where he was like, I got you, babe. I'm praying. You figure all the plans out, and I'll be over here praying. And I'm praying too. Don't get me wrong. But I'm making the plans to make it the best, but I'm going to have another plan in case it's not, so it still will be good.
Let me show you our strengths. Put my strengths up there. All right, we'll start with Ashlee. So this is, it didn't come out as clear as we wanted to.
Yeah, it's really blurry.
But what it basically says...
It's in 3D,
yeah, it's in 3D.
glasses.
You didn't bring your glasses, it's fine.
Sorry.
I didn't wear mine. But if you'll notice at the top, you've got green, purple, green. All that means is that it's broken down into these 4 different categories. Well, Ashlee's top 4 out of 5 strength is strategic, is it strategic thinking?
Strategic thinking.
So she thinks a lot. So she's always in her head. She's going and constantly. She's always thinking. Notice the top 5 of her strengths are in strategic thinking. Now let's go to mine. I don't have any. 0. Like my number 34 is there's one called input. That means you're just craving knowledge and you're just trying to put stuff in. That's not me. I'll read a book if I have to, right? I'll listen to more books, but I'll read it, but input. But if you'll notice my top 4 out of 5 is in relationships. Is in building relationships, okay? And so, but when you know that information, you're able to utilize that information better, whether that's in the workplace and whether that's at home, but also like with your children, how you're raising your kids, who takes on what responsibility, but you can cheer each other on in doing that.
Another one that he has in his top 10 is responsibility. It's fluctuated a little bit. It was in your top 5. And before I knew that, he when he commits to something, he does it. Like, by golly, if he tells you he's going to do something, he will be there. He will do it. He'll probably be 10 minutes early, maybe 20 minutes early. He'll probably bring you some coffee. I mean, this is him, you know. And so, but that would frustrate me sometimes because sometimes he would commit to things and not tell me. And I would be like, babe, what are you, like there was one time he had told somebody from church, hey, can you help me move? Sure, I'll come help you move this Saturday. Great. So I'm like, hey, don't forget we have this thing on Saturday. And he's like, oh, I can't. I'm helping so-and-so move. I'm like, but you didn't even tell me. And he's like, well, I'm sorry, but I have to because I committed to him. And so that was a point of frustration in our marriage for many years where he would commit to things because it's in him. Like when he commits, he has to do it. Like he can't, it's like, I don't know, it's like he's giving them his blood sign or something. I mean, like he has to like do it. And, but we talked about it and I was like, babe, I get it. Like I get that responsibility is important to you, but instead of answering somebody and saying, yes, could you just check in and be like, hey, you know, so-and-so wants me to help them move on Saturday. Do we have anything going on? You know, just check with me, you know, just to make sure we don't have anything else, you know, because I'm the keeper of the calendar. And he said, yes. He said, but if you say, yes, I can do it, and I commit to them, you've got to understand that I've got to do it. And I said, okay, I understand. If we agree, and I say, yeah, go for it, then I can't come back and say, well, you know what? Never mind, this is happening. You got to get out of that.
Now, why do we do that? Because we're a team. Well, I don't have to check with her. Okay, that means you're not a team. Because she sees my blind spots. I see her blind spots. But what we try to do is cover each other with grace. And so whenever notice her tone and how she said it, that's exactly how she said it to me that day. Hey, listen, the next time something like that comes up, will you just check and see if we've got anything on the calendar? And I was like, well, yeah, of course, you know. And hey, and if we find out that there's nothing on the calendar and you're okay with it, just make sure that it's okay, because it drives me crazy if I give somebody my word. My word is my bond. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. You know, come hell or high water, I'm going to do it, right? But it's important that you do it. For me, it's important I do what I say. But it was more important for me to honor my wife and say, hey, if we don't have anything going on, let's move forward, but let's do it together. And so we helped each other see the importance of each other's strengths in that example.
Yeah, we have one more story to share, and then we're going to give you some takeaways and some challenges. Some of our best friends, Jeff and Michelle Collins, are sitting on the front row. They teach at the next class. They came to us about 5 years ago. Yeah. 5 years ago. And Jeff was in banking, Michelle's been in real estate for years, and they decided that they were going to go into business together. He was going to come over and do real estate with her. And we had gone on a marriage missions trip together, and we could tell that things weren't going so well in their marriage. They've shared all this before, and they've given us carte blanche to share this. And they came to, or we actually came to them, and we were like, are you guys okay? And they were like, no, we're struggling. We need some help. And they said, could you guys meet with us after this trip? And we were like, yes. And they kind of told us what was going on. There were some frustrations. Michelle, if you know Michelle, she is going 90 miles an hour. And Jeff is going about 35 miles an hour. And so we could tell, that there was, and we were like, have you guys taken the Strenghfinders test? And they were like, no, we haven't. What's that? And so we explained it to them. And they're like, oh, okay. And we're like, we are not going to meet with you until you take this test. And they were like, okay. And we're like, take the test. When you've taken the test, we will talk. And so they took the test, and Jeff's top 5s are almost similar to mine. All of his are in strategic thinking, relator, learner, intellection, analytical, harmony. Michelle's are all in, so there's strategic thinking, relationship building, execution, and influencing. Almost all of hers are in influencing. Competition, woo, strategic, communication, activator. And so we told them, we were like, look at these strengths.
So the difference would be if you're riding on a roller coaster, Michelle is, whee! Jeff is, let me make sure I got everything on, and I've got where's the, is everybody giving the thumbs up? Okay, I got that on, got the seatbelt on, we're ready to go. Okay, let's go.
And Michelle's already gone.
Yeah, she's gone.
I mean, she has
seatbelt or not, she's gone.
She's gone.
Yeah.
And so that was the frustration. She was like, I need him to just go. And he's like, but I got to learn how to do this. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And she's like, well, you just need to come on, learn as we go. And so we were like, okay, look at these strengths. Michelle, look at Jeff's strengths. Have these things been frustrating to you? She's like, yes. And we were like, Jeff, look at her strengths. Has this been frustrating to you? Yes. We're like, okay. So you got to understand that these aren't weaknesses. These are strengths. And when you combine these 2 strengths together, you've got 10 strengths. If you're in unity and you're working and you're hand in hand and you're going together as a team, you got to understand, Michelle doesn't have any of the strategic thinking, but she does because she has Jeff. Yes. Right? And Jeff might not be able to go 90 miles an hour, but he can because he has Michelle. So instead of seeing those things as frustrations, they have learned over the years that now they are a superpower couple. And if they can lean on each other's strengths and help balance, it's like a seesaw. If one's jumping on, the other one's going to fly off, right? You got to balance it, right? And when you get those strengths in balance, you can be a super couple. And they are killing it right now. In their business, in their marriage, it's amazing what God has done through them, through many things, but specifically through them learning their strengths.
And the frustration is what sometimes they call counterfeits. Because when Ashlee was operating in her strategic gifting, I did see her as negative. Because that's the counterfeit of being strategic in that, or how it comes across. Because I wasn't seeing it for the true value. And so you have to be careful. If there's any, I'm sure none of y'all have frustrations in your marriage, but one day you might. But a lot of times that frustration that can happen is because you're seeing them in a counterfeit way, not in a true strength way.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. So we just want to leave you with a couple of takeaways. Can we go to that next? Yeah. So take the test. It costs $12, $15 a piece, I think. Here's the QR code. If you take a picture of that, if you have not taken the test, or if it's been a couple of years, we take the test about every 5 years just to see if
I hope it's clear enough that it lets you.
Does it not?
If it doesn't, I'll tell you the website.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's Strenghfinders.com. Take the test. Is it Strength? Clifton.
Strength.
Yeah.
Clifton Strength.
And it'll pull right up.
Yeah. Take the test. It takes about 30 minutes to take the test. You need to make sure you take it without any interruptions from anybody, because it even times you on how long it takes you to answer. So you got to make sure your kids are in bed or they're taken care of, and you can be alone for 30 minutes. So take the test. And then after you both take the test, you'll get your results. You'll see the top 5. If you want to pay to see all 34, you can. If you don't have to. It's like another $40 or something. If you want to, you can. It's pretty interesting to see. You guys, positivity was my number 32. But I know Pastor Joel said it today. He said it's not just positivity, it's about expressing your faith. And so I know how to express my faith. I know to declare the word of God when I'm believing for something, believe me. But positivity was really, really low. And I thought that was really funny when I saw that on there. And then a lot of my top 5 were in his bottom. Like, it was just it's so fascinating to see that. So if you want to pay the extra, you can.
You can go to Gallup.com, Gallup. Like you've heard, like during elections and different things, they call it the Gallup poll. That's who actually, they bought Gallup, or Clifton actually bought Gallup, but you can look in their store and you'll see the Clifton StrengthFinders. So sorry that it didn't come out clear.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the takeaway. Take the test. Encourage each other to take the test, and then go on a date and discuss your strengths. Go on a date to discuss, hey, what was your top 5? Like Ashlee said, be a student of human behavior, not only of yourself, and recognizing the strengths that God's given you for yourself, but also take an interest in the strengths that God's given them. And then identify those things, and different times they come up, say, hey, I see it. Like, one of her top 5 is ideation. She loves to sit in a room with other people and come up with ideas. And when she comes up with idea, like we had an issue here at the church one time, and we were trying to think of some idea, and she wasn't in the room, but I knew that was her strength. What did I do? I got on the phone. I said, guys, give me 2 minutes. I'll have this problem solved. Give me just a second. Let me make a phone. I got a phone, my friend. Hang on a minute. I called Ashlee. I told her the situation. 20 seconds later, she said, oh, you could do this. You could do this. You could do this. I mean, she's like giving me 3 or 4 different things. And what was happening? She was like on the juice at that moment.
Why didn't you invite me to this meeting?
Why didn't you bring me to this meeting? This is awesome. I wish I could have been there. I'm like, well, I'm so sorry. I got to go. And then I walk in and goes, guys, I got it fixed. I got the problem answered. Here's what we're going to do. And they're like, how did you come up with that? I'm like, I don't know. Just the Holy Spirit. I gave her all the credit. I gave her all the credit. So, but when you know each other's strengths, you can flow like that, because I get to take advantage of her top 5 strengths.
That's such a good word, flow. Yeah. You will flow together if you know each other's strengths and implement them and celebrate them and honor them. You will flow. That's good.
Last thing, cheer on your spouse.
Yeah.
Cheer on your spouse. Roy Garcia says it all the time, even in weddings. He said, be your spouse's greatest cheerleader, not their biggest referee. Quit throwing the yellow hanky. Quit calling out the fouls that your spouse might be doing or might not be doing. Cheer them on. They have enough referees. Let me tell you something. When my wife is cheering me on, I don't care if the world is crumbling.
That's good.
But if she's cheering me on, I can do anything. But if she throws a flag and points out something that's wrong, she has a way of doing it, and it's the right way. But when she doesn't do it that way, it can crush me. And vice versa. But be each other's cheerleader through the process. Cool. I'm going to pray.
We went over.
Yeah,
we're sorry. We're always like,
Forgive
stay
us.
on time. We went over.
Forgive us. We're going to pray. Real quick prayer. Blessed are the short-winded. They'll be invited back. God, thank you for today. Thank you for giving us tools. God, thank you for your word. Thank you for every single person in this room. Yes. God, thank you that you created them a masterpiece.
Yes.
God, they're one in a quadrillion, if that's even a word. God, I thank you that there's never been someone before them. Yes. There's never been someone after them, that you created them uniquely. Yes. So, Father, I pray that you would let us take these tools and these examples to further your kingdom and to encourage each other in our marriages. Father, I pray a blessing and speak life and strength over every marriage in the season that they're in. Yes. Father, I pray that you would breathe upon them and overwhelm them with your presence in their marriage. God, I thank you that the greatest days of their marriage are still out in front of them. Yes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Love you guys.
Thank you guys. Love you guys. Have a great Father's Day.